So this next section that we have, I want it to be very interactive, right? And it's almost like we'll be building as we go along before we have like a breakout session where participants will then have time to focus and come up with an initial draft of a BMC for their business. I call it an initial draft because in practice, you will need to engage quite a bit with some of your stakeholders, particularly your customers, before you can refine and finalize on your BMC. So whatever we come up with today, I'm sure it's just going to be an initial draft. So for that reason, I want to be sure that I have like the full attention of everyone before we start. So Abdul Ghaffar, Abdul Rafi, Bukola, Mistura, and anybody else on the call, can you just confirm to me either verbally or through the message box that you're ready to go so we can then jump in and start? Very important. Let me know.
Yeah, ready.
Alrighty, thanks, Gafar. Rafi, Bukola, Mr. You guys good to go?
Good to go.
Good to go. Thanks, Bukola. Okay, so I think with Bukola and Abdulgafar, good to go. We can start, and then as others like Rafi and Mr. come along, then they can join the conversation. All right, so thanks a lot, guys, for joining. And the next session is business model canvas. And I think this is coming at a very good time, having discussed like the general overview of your businesses, looked at the environment, and also assessed some of your strengths and weaknesses and the opportunities in the market that you're trying to capitalize on. I feel like this is a perfect time to sort of touch on the business model. So without wasting any more time, let's just jump right in. So gonna move on now. Second. Alrighty. So quick question for you guys. When you think of a successful business, and this can be a business within your industry, outside your industry, within Nigeria, outside Nigeria, just generally, when you think of a successful business, what company comes to mind? Bukola.
Toyota.
Toyota. Nice. Okay. And then Abdul Ghaffar, what comes to mind? We think of a successful business.
Dangote.
Dangote, nice. Okay. So Bukola, when you said Toyota, it's very easy or it's very quick for someone to just say, okay, probably because we see their cars everywhere in Nigeria particularly, or is there any particular reason why Toyota comes to mind? Just
It's
out
not
of
actually
curiosity.
because of their cars. I think it's more because I've studied their model,
Their model, okay.
their structure, their organizational build or structure rather. You
Yeah.
understand? And I think it's something I would recommend any business to look at and kind of
Okay.
like model.
What
That's
strikes you the most in their model? What strikes
so
you the
there's
most?
concept called Kaizen,
Okay.
which is continuous improvement.
Correct.
That also um, has to do with sustainability of their
Correct.
business.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. And I think they were the ones that also popularized the model of just in time, right?
Yeah,
Which
just in
also
time. Exactly.
contributed to their success.
Just
So
in
yeah,
time.
just in time. Yeah, all right, brilliant. And Gafar, when you mentioned Dangote, what's like the key thing that strikes you the most about Dangote?
Uh, okay, so for Dangote, we all know that Dangote, the brain behind Dangote Industries or Dangote, I don't know what they call themselves, but we all know that he's one of the most successful businessmen in Africa and probably one of the top shots in the world. So for somebody to be at that level, it means his business is doing something right. It's and the fact that it at least based on what I know, that it doesn't just stay. It's not staying in just one sector of the business. Is trying to expand all the time, going into other areas, into telecoms, construction, farming, processing, food processing, and what have you. So that's it's just even so okay, the major one, which is the monopoly of Dangote cement in Nigeria. So I believe that's why Dangote was just came up.
Yeah. Like that was a huge chunk of the overall portfolio. So I think when you think of Dangote, right? I think if you look deeper as well into Dangote structure, you will also see that there's a unique model and also other things that gives him that protection. I won't say monopoly in the cement space because you have Bua, you have Lafarge and Co, but dominant market share, right, where you're able to also, influence market price, protect your own market share, and things like that. So I think in these different businesses that we've mentioned, one thing that they all have in common is, very robust and strong business model that sort of guarantees them the success that they've been able to achieve. And that's the crux of what we'll be discussing over the next few minutes. But for me, when I think about successful businesses, particularly in today's market, some of the names that come to my mind are guys like Google, right? Guys like Microsoft, guys like Apple. And if you look at these companies, it's also something very common amongst these three companies. They're technology firms, right? So if you cast your mind back maybe 10 years ago from today or 20 years ago, and you looked at the market capitalization of companies, and again, market capitalization is like the value of companies, right? And if you look at like the top 10 or top 20 as of maybe 10 years, 20 years ago, you would have seen companies like ExxonMobil, Aramco, and companies like that that were in energy sector, oil and gas industry. Those used to be like some of the most valuable countries. And again, if you think about success, valuation is an indication. What's the total value of the company? Now, when people say Dangote is the richest man in Africa, or is the most, whatever business, they're looking at the value of his companies. What's the value of the Dangote cement business? What's the value of the sugar business and things like that. It's easier to track some of them because they are listed on stock exchanges, but there are other businesses that might not necessarily be listed. So for me, when I think about successful businesses, I sort of look at, what's the valuation of this company, how large is this business, how big, how profitable are they? So that's some of the things. And funny enough, in today's market, if you look at the top 10, maybe 7 out of 10, if not 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 are technology companies, with companies like Microsoft worth over $2 trillion, companies like Apple worth over $2 trillion, companies like Google worth over $1 trillion, right? And behind these companies as well, are business models that sort of gives them that protection, that ability to grow and create value. But it doesn't mean that these businesses haven't had their fair share of failures. And most businesses do have their own fair share of failures. But with continuous reevaluation, remodeling, re-engineering of your business model, you might then strike something that really works and then gives you that protection and ability to grow and scale your business. Google had their own fair share where they struggled in the initial years before they found, a business model that works so superbly, whereby they were able to generate significant cash flows for themselves. Apple itself had problems initially where, it took companies like even Microsoft, giving them some investment at the early stages to support the growth of the businesses. So at the end of the day, behind every successful business is a business model that can either make the company or break that company. And I think it's a very important topic for us to be discussing now. And then as we go along, we'll look at some of these other companies in a lot more detail to see what sort of business model they've adopted to give them that sort of growth. And, with technology companies today, a key business model that enabled a lot of them create stupid value is the subscription model, whereby a lot of their users are paying a monthly amount. Then every month or annually, they're generating recurring revenue. At the initial stages of Microsoft, what they were selling was CD-ROMs. They were selling CD-ROMs, and then once you buy the CD-ROM, you can install it on computers, as many as possible. You have product keys. At some point, they brought product keys. So for every product, you have a key. Now with subscription, so you have to pay on a per user basis. So that guarantees them a very solid cash flow and recurring business. And that's one of the key attributes for business models. You want a business model that guarantees you recurring cash flows as well as profitability. That's a very core idea. And then if you look at companies like Dangote as well, a lot of time they play around scale, and they want to ensure that they capture a huge chunk of the market so that they're able to reduce their unit cost on one hand. And once they achieve that low cost, they're able to then even lower price and kill anybody else that is in the market that doesn't have as much scale or as lower cost as they do. And then, by so doing, they increase their market share. And by so doing again, they lower their cost even more and increase their margins. So there are different ideas to this different thing. And depending on the kind of business you run, there will be different models that you can also sort of, leverage. But ultimately, you want to make sure that you have models that are, robust, that are scalable, and that guarantees you profit. So that's like an introduction into this conversation. And then the next thing I want to share with us is some of the objectives that we should have for this session. So my expectation is that by the end of this session, participants should be able to define, what a business model canvas is, identify some of the importance of having a solid one for your business, explaining the elements so that you're able to, build one for your business, and obviously iterate it over time. Like I mentioned, it's not that you just do a business model today and then you pack it forever. It's something that you revisit, and as you implement, you continue to consider changes and trade-offs that you might need to have. And my expectation is that by the end of this program, we should be able to build an initial draft for our different businesses. So with that said, the outline will be looking at the overview, talking about the elements, and then I want it to be very interactive. So as we're going, if you have comments, questions, please just, fire away, and then let's have a very interactive session. So starting with the overview, what exactly is a business model canvas? I think we should start from there, right? What's a business model canvas? There are different definitions for this. For me, it's just a very simple document that helps you articulate the key elements that drives, business decision making and as well as strategy, right? But let's look at some of the more formal definitions. So BMC is a strategic management and lean startup tool for developing new or re-engineering existing business model. I think one of the things I find very powerful about business model is not just for companies that are just starting out. We've seen examples of companies that they re-engineer their existing models, right? You've been in business for 20 years, 50 years, but given different changes, they come out, re-engineer their models, and, they're able to then change the trajectory of the business. So it's relevant for both new and existing businesses, right? So that's one definition. Another is that it's a visual chart. So but at the heart of BMC, and one of the things I love the most about it, is just a simple one-pager where you can articulate key elements of your business and see how everything stacks up to creating a business that will be not only, viable, but also a very thriving business. So it's a simple visual art with elements around the firms or the product's value proposition, as well as other matters like the infrastructure, what are the key things that you need to deliver your business, customers, the finances, being revenue, cost. And we'll look at all these aspects in a lot of detail soon. And then another definition here is it assists firms in aligning activities by illustrating potential trade-offs. So when it comes to businesses, and I mentioned this in the last session, There are so many ideas, there are so many activities and initiatives, but at the end of the day, a business is going to involve a lot of trade-offs. If you want to operate across Nigeria, that means, having locations maybe, and then you're investing in capital to set up, or having to have more people, you're going to pay more wages and salaries. There are trade-offs for everything every decision you make in your business. So being aware of those trade-offs and how they affect your bottom line, your finances, either revenue and cost, is very critical to making the right decision, right? So very important. Just always bear in mind that for any decision you make, there's a potential trade-off that you also need to be on top of, right? Okay, and then the business model is a simple one-pager that addresses the most important elements to launch or re-engineer a business. So when you think about businesses, without viewing your business from this simple business model canvas, there is a very strong probability that you will be overlooking certain important factors that might then come back and bite you in the ass. So, having this 360 view, like I like to call it, is very critical, particularly from the early stages of your business. And then as you ramp up as well, you keep revisiting it and trying to see how, to structure your business. So in terms of the definition and what we've just talked about over the last few minutes, are there any questions or comments, or is there anything you want me to clarify before we jump on to the next stage of looking at an actual BMC? Any comments, questions, areas for clarification? Everybody good? Okay, I think Gafar, do you have a question? I saw your hand.
No. We're good.
All right, all good. All right, cool. So let's move on then. So this is a sample of what a BMC looks like. And if you pay close attention, you'll see that there are some color coding here, which gives you like the 4 main aspects of a BMC. The first color code you can see is on the right-hand side, which talks about the customers. So everything here has to do with your customers. We're starting with the customer segment, which is, in my mind, the most important of the 9 elements. You have the customer segment, you have the customer relationship and channels. So this has to do with your customers. Then the next color you'll see there is the one in the middle, value propositions, right? And this is, what are those promises that you have for this customer, for this guy? What are those core value propositions? Again, this is very critical to your overall business model, right? And, we'll talk about them in a lot more detail. Then the next section is we like call this gray now, or light blue, which has to do with the infrastructure. What are those things that you need to have in place to be able to deliver this value proposition for you to cook it up? So this is like your back end. This is like your kitchen. So for example, you might promise your customers sparkling vehicles anytime they come into your store. So what that means is, I need to have machines that you use for your detailing, or you need to have top personnel that, are very skilled in a number of things, or maybe you have partners that provide you with adequate chemicals or electricity or whatever else you need to use for that. So your key activities, your resources, your partners, these are very important in cooking up your value prop. And then ultimately, these guys will cost you dollars. They will cost you money. So for example, if you're going to need a physical location, you're either buying up properties or you're renting. That's going to cost you. If you're going to have resources like buying up maybe motor vehicles, machines, or even people, your staff, that's also going to cost you dollars. You might have partnerships where you've already said, rather than you building your technology for the smart home, like Gafar mentioned, you might need to partner with maybe IT companies that can write code efficiently. Again, that's going to cost you dollars. So everything in your infrastructure here is going to cost you money. And that's why you have the finances at the bottom. So these yellow tabs are for your finances. And you can see that the cost is on the left-hand side, whilst the revenue is on the right-hand side. Why? Because your revenue is going to come from your customers, right? And then ultimately, you want a business model that guarantees you over the long term more revenue streams than your cost. That's what determines a profitable business. If you're running a business where your cost is greater than your revenue, you're already making losses. And it might be okay or acceptable for you to make losses initially. But as you grow over the medium to long term, the expectation is that the business model has the potential to guarantee you positive finances. Any question or comments on this general overview? We're going to do a deep dive, but at this stage, do we have any questions or comments? Any questions or comments? Questions, comments? Okay. So whilst I move ahead, please, I want everyone to be thinking of what problem your business is solving in the marketplace. And because I think a very good way to think about your business is also think about it from the lens of what problem are you solving? You know, why do you matter to your customers? So think about that. I'm going to come back to everyone to just tell me, you know, what sort of problem you're solving. Right. So I'll move on to the next slide now. So before we do a deep dive, I just wanted to also talk about some of the very key features of a very good business model. Related to this, but we'll just touch on it. So the first one is it has to be aligned with your goals. So a lot of the things we're talking about, they are very linked, they're intertwined, right? And you know, that's why we started the conversation. You know, what's your vision for this business that you're doing? You know, what is your mission? What are you trying to change? What are you trying to bring about in the society? What are your goals, basically, right? So whatever your goals are, your business model has to be aligned. It has to be linked. It has to support the achievement of your goals. You know, so that's a very key feature of your business model. It also has to be self-reinforcing. And this point is actually linked to the first point in the sense that if I say that my goal is to be, for example, a low-cost provider of a certain service, then whatever business model I'm putting out should also support that low cost. So it shouldn't be that I'm trying to be low cost, but I'm then offering services that are frivolous or luxury that might just increase my cost item or things around that same idea. So for example, imagine a airline that's trying to be a low cost airline, and then on the airline, yeah, trying to offer meals like you know, pizzas as in flight meals, you know, which is usually more common with more luxury type airlines. So your model has to be self-reinforcing. And again, that also ties to the first point, that is aligned with your goal. How are you trying to shape your business? Then it has to be robust. And usually when I think about having robust business model, a few ideas come to mind. You know, does your business model support, does it defends your position in terms of competitors? Or is your business model something that once you do it, anybody else can just come, copy you, and then, you know, that's the end? It doesn't defend you from a competitive standpoint. You know, you need to think about that. This is something that can be easily replicated. You know, does your business model also sort of gives you a position whereby your bargaining power with either customers or suppliers are not diminished? You know, so nobody can just come and say, okay, because your business model is set up that somebody that is outside the organization controls a very key resource that you need for your business, and then all of a sudden they can decide to increase that price or decide not to sell to you, and your business is dead. You know, we've seen, if you look at the technology business today, for a very long time, Apple used to assemble their products in China. They design in California, assemble in China, and they were dependent on guys like Intel for chip and things like that. That might have been very necessary at the early days where they were trying to focus on key areas that are core to their business. But now you've seen Apple come out and say they are developing their own chips, right? And now they are stopping to use Intel and some of these other guys. That's a key business model iteration that also guarantees them a stronger position, because Intel could wake up one morning and say, okay, we're increasing the price of these chips, which might then make Apple go from X% margin to Y% margin and affect their profitability. So a robust business model will also be something that, you know, also gives you a strong position when it comes to dealing with guys within your value chain, like your suppliers, your customers as well. And then obviously it also prevents you from having complacency in the business, whereby, you know, there's a slack in the organization and your people are not as driven or as motivated to create value as you would have originally wanted. So those are some key ideas to bear in mind when you're building up your business model. How does it, support your business over the long term? Okay, questions, comments? Questions, comments? Everybody good? Okay. All right. So quick questions for us to think about as we go over the next few slides when we do the deep dive. All good. All right. So some questions to think about. Right. So the first question I want us to bear at the back of our mind as we go over the next few slides of deep dive is, what is the effort for your customers to switch to another company? Right. If your customers can just wake up one morning and then boom, they're out of the door, low switching cost, then that doesn't give you a very strong competitive position. Right. So as part of your business model engineering, you want to try as much as possible to make it difficult for your customers to switch. And I don't say that from a bad position. It's almost like making yourself so valuable that somebody can just wake up and say, boom, I'm leaving. Right. And obviously, businesses go to different lengths to make that possible. For example, if you think about products like, let's say, Microsoft or Google or Apple, and how do they make their products more sticky? Yeah, they're a family of products. So for a very long time, and even till now, Apple has a very closed ecosystem where, from your storage to pictures to your mobile phone, your contacts, your email addresses, and a number of other things are dependent on that ecosystem. So if I just wanted to switch today from Apple to Samsung, for example, I'll think about it twice. Am I ready for this move? I can't just wake up one morning and say I'm dumping it, right? Because you have all these other things that are tying you, that make you more sticky. Right. So those are some different ideas. For another one, it might be that you're just adding so much value day in, day out that it makes it difficult for somebody to leave. Or you've built in a huge database of information and value that somebody can't just wake up and say they're going to leave. Or the cost involved is very high. Right. So if you think about ISP providers in Nigeria today, for example, if I want to switch from Fiber One to IPNX or any of the other guys, I'm going to be thinking about buying a new system or a new engine, right? I can't just wake up and say, boom, I'm moving to the next guy. So some of those things, they serve as a protection for your business, because with low switching costs, that means that your customers can't just wake up and fly out. So you also have to be thinking about what's the effort that customers. So the higher the effort, the better it is for your business in the long run. Right. How scalable is your business model? How quickly can you go from 100 to 1,000 to 1 million in terms of serving, businesses? And, when Abdul Ghaffar was talking about some of the dynamics in his business, and he said something around, being wanting to do everything himself, like, right? You probably can. So thinking about how do you make your business scalable in the business model you are setting up is also very key, so that you're able to grow fast, right? And in fixing that might mean, creating standard procedures or manuals to make sure that anybody that comes on can very quickly learn and start running, getting people in, training them, having partnerships and things like that. Some of those ideas can make your business more scalable, and creating products or digital services as well. So that's something that you also have to be thinking about. How scalable is this business model that I'm putting together? Then, does your business model produce recurring revenues? This is very important in having robust models. As everybody knows, cash is the lifeblood of businesses, and if you run out of it, you're dead, right? So a number of businesses, they might be doing very well in terms of maybe they get one big contract and all that. But if you're not generating recurring cash flows, it puts you at a very high risk, and then it also affects how attractive and bankable your business is over the time. And then more importantly, if you're not even generating as much revenue compared to your cost, then you're heading for the grave. So having a business that generates recurring revenues is very important. For service businesses, and if we take, let's take for example, a car wash business, a car detailing business. You might be thinking that, okay, you're just going to do a business whereby somebody comes in and then you wash their car, right? But they might decide not to come in the next month. Another business model might be that you have actual subscription plans where people can sign up and then they can bring their car X number of times per month or X number of times per quarter, and once they pay a fixed fee. That way, you're guaranteed that at least for a period, they will be coming back. And then obviously there are things that might matter to this group of customers that you are then putting together. So most of these ideas are not in isolation. But if I provide a value that a particular group of customers find useful and valuable, then they are willing to key into it. So trying to understand those people, your customers, is a very important step that everybody has to take to be able to then decide on what are my value propositions going to be. And as much as possible, if you can make the compensation that comes from you delivering that value proposition recurring, then that's almost like the holy grail. So you want to make sure as much as possible. So that's something that you want to be thinking about. Is there a way that we can be doing this? And for some service business, that might be through maybe retainers, or it might be through actual subscriptions where you then cover a minimum level of services, or it might be through creating products as well. You create that smart home, whatever, and then it's an application that they have to download. And then for certain things, they are paying you X number per month or per annum. That's recurring revenue. So that's, I think, an ideal spot that most businesses will want to strive to guarantee you a robust business model. The fourth question here is, do you make your sales with your business model before investing? Right? There are some businesses, and again, for service businesses, this is very common, where you can actually collect some part of your revenue upfront before you actually start investing to deliver the product. Right. So again, that's another model that can be very valuable, because for a number of businesses, if you think about a manufacturing company, you might have to raise capital to go and build that facility, and then you then wait for the customers to come. For some other businesses, you might actually already have an agreement with the customer that, okay, we're going to pay you X now, and then when you deliver, I'll pay you Y. That's another thing you want to try to optimize for, so that at least you're not investing first and then trying to hope and pray that revenue is coming. That's a position I would like to be in, make sales before even investing. Did anybody want to say anything about that or anything else? I heard some. Okay. So the next question here is, how much does your business model encourage customers and other players to create free added value for your company? And this is very important. Are you able to extract value even from your own customers? There are some businesses whereby, once you buy the product, they have to then provide after sales services. Maybe they come to your house to install. And there's some businesses that package their business in a way that once you get the product on your own, you can set it up. And then you're also creating value for that company, because instead of them sending a special support team to do that, you are the ones doing that. Right. So thinking about how you deliver from A to Z of your product, and how you might also even encourage customers or other players within your value chain to add value is also very important, because for every step or every chain within your process of delivering value, they can either be value creation or value destruction, whereby somebody else is capturing that value. So as you think about your business, you're also trying to think about, are there other things that you can extract value from across that process, and then seeing how you can leverage that. Then how well does your business model protect you from competition? I already talked about this, and that's what the robustness in your model is also about. If there's some protection that comes from your business model, then that's also very key to having a successful business. And I think for sectors like technology space, where you're able to get like intellectual property, you might get some protection from that. From healthcare as well, you might get some. And then even when you think about other businesses whereby, they're not necessarily tech or healthcare like, but there are models whereby you can still protect a key market share, whereby you have like contracts, for example, with government, and then you have an exclusive contract for X number of period. That can protect you. Guys like the LCC, the toll bridge, and part of that business model was you have a PPP with the government, and you have a period of, let's say, 20 years or 50 years for you to make X number of returns. So you are protected to an extent because you have that level of contract. So contracts might give you that sort of protection from businesses. It might be through legal means as well, where you get that protection. And in some cases, it might just be the way you deliver that gives you that protection, right? From business, it might be the customer experience. And, you know, guys like Tesla, like Apple, the way they built that business model is almost end to end, whereby for somebody else to come and deliver that in the same way they do it, will be very difficult. They're very unique. So that uniqueness, that distinctness also gives you, you know, a protection. And there are other angles to think about it, right? Where you are able to get that. For a company whereby you've built a service for a company, and let's say it's a design service, and then maybe based on your solution on a monthly basis, there are insights that you share with the customer based on the data you're gathering from that process. It will be very difficult for another civil engineer to just say, okay, I want to do this thing for you, and then, you know, you start doing it because you have built something proprietary that provides additional ongoing value that might be hard for another person to replicate or copy. Right, or maybe you have some other protection that prevents them from doing that. So again, thinking about that and thinking about protection for competition is important, because you know what they say, that once you are making abnormal profit in a business, what that does is attracts other people to come in, and then ultimately that entry of new entrants will also wipe away some of those profits, and then you're back to like everybody else hustling for the next couple. So thinking about how to protect yourself from competition is also something very important, particularly for startups. And then finally, the last question here is your cost model substantially better than your competitors? For mass market type businesses where you're all competing in a very wide market, and usually the person with the largest size or the lowest cost will win, you know, it's always important to try as much as possible to lower your cost. It's always better to have a lower cost than a higher cost, right? But if you're in a differentiated market or a specialized market, you might be able to get away with it because you're able to command a premium. But ultimately, you also want to ask on how efficient your cost model is and try to lower your cost as much as possible. And we'll still talk about this in a lot more detail. So those are like key questions that I believe all of us should be cracking our heads on to think about for the business that you're trying to do. How are you able to ensure that your business model has these features, right? Questions, comments, contributions? Are we all together? Okay. So we're going to jump right into benefits. And let's just look at some of the benefits of having a business model. We've talked about most of them, but I'll just run through them also very quickly. Your BMC is focused, right? And so for some of you that might be struggling with, you know, what to do, how to do, how many things to combine, BMC enables you focus on the most important thing for your business to grow, right? So it's a very focused tool. Second point is that it's very clear and concise. It's just a simple one pager where you think about the different elements of your business and you try to represent the most important points in each of the different categories. And then it's customer centric, because at the heart of your BMC is how do you satisfy your customer? How do you deliver value to your customer? So it's target customers' needs. It also reduces your risk of failure. And as we'll show from a case study very soon, is with your BMC, it doesn't guarantee you success, but because you've considered the most important elements that determines success in your space, it reduces the risk of failure. Right? You know what they say about, you know, failing to plan is pretty much planning to fail. Right. So your business model actually reduces the risk of your failure. It's a flexible tool. It's a transparent tool, and then it's a scientific framework that actually works, right? So these are some of the benefits from the business model. So what I want us to do now, if there are no comments or questions, is to quickly watch a 2-minute video on BMC in practice. So I'm going to share I'm going to play a video now. So let me just check that the audio is also enabled. All right, so please give me a thumbs up if you can see and hear the contents in a few seconds. Ready?
Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about a famous toy manufacturer that
Could you guys hear?
Hi everyone.
Yes.
All right, cool.
Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about a famous toy manufacturer that almost went bankrupt 10 years ago, but that turned its business around to become the world's top-selling toy manufacturer today. I'm obviously talking about Lego and their famous Lego bricks.
Is it not supposed to be a
Lego
video?
invented the little stackable bricks that are sold in sets to kids and that the company patented. In the late 90s, Lego obtained the rights to design kits based on popular movies like Star Wars and then later Harry Potter, and which have represented a major source of revenue since. Amongst this line of products, Lego also counted diverse other Lego branded products like computer games, apparel, and theme parks. But Lego's patents soon expired, and they didn't protect Lego from copycats anymore. On top of that, there was less interest in Lego in new generations of kids that grew up with video games, with tech products. In the 2000s, Lego was on the verge of bankruptcy. They got rid of Lego branded products and decided to focus solely on their core value proposition, the Lego bricks. They slashed their costs by getting rid of products and kits that weren't profitable and by streamlining operations. Lego kits had been a boy products for a long time, but now Lego is literally doubling the size of its market by designing sets for little girls who rave about them. Lego got back in the race with earnings that have soared in the past years and a brand that is recognized by others. The recent proof of it is the success of the Lego movie. Although they almost failed, Lego redesigned its business model to stay as relevant to kids today as it was in the past.
Alrighty. So that was an example of BMC in actual practice, and from that example, we could also see that it was an existing business, Lego, who had enjoyed intellectual protection for a while, and then they had to re-engineer. So I'll just very quickly go around. I want to hear some of your thoughts in terms of the video we just watched. What are some of the key things that struck you, or something that you can pull out? Any insight you can pull out from that to share with the rest of the room. So can start with Bukola, if you don't mind. Bukola.
Okay, yeah. So what caught my attention is how they quickly remodeled their
Yeah.
business strategy when they found out that their revenue had started declining. And
Yeah.
I mean, there was a market that was, I mean, it wasn't in the same industry. It was just that something else had taken the minds of, their customers, and they needed to get that what's it called back, that space back, that share back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it.
Yes, thanks a lot. I like the way you put it in terms of the competition. So the competition doesn't necessarily have to even come from your immediate industry.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
could be from somewhere else, but you have to then try to figure out. And one key thing they were also able to do with that was then to even expand the market. So initially they were focused on boys. The toys were more for boys, but now they started creating products that would be interesting to females as well. All right, thanks for that. Abdulgafar, any insight or key point you wanted to share from the video?
Okay, I think what speaks to me is how they were able to remodel following their copyright license expiration and expiring, so they had to find a way to remodel so as to stay afloat if other people copy their model.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks. And Abdurrafi, anything from you? or Muhammad. Okay, so Mustafa Muhammad joined us. So Mustafa, any thoughts from you on the last video we just watched? Muhammad, Mustafa, Muhammad, or Abdurafi, any comments from you guys? It looks like they are not active. So let's move on without wasting any more time. So now we're going to get into a deeper level of understanding each of these elements. And what I want us to be thinking of the most is how this also applies to your business and how you're able to leverage some of what we're talking about to build your own BM business model. All right, so we're going to jump right in. So the first and the most important element for this is your customer segment, right? There's a popular saying, customer is king, right? Even though some people disagree, but everything starts and ends with the customer, right? So it's important that, 1 second, turn on my laser point. It's important that you focus on the customers a lot and almost become obsessed with them, because at the end of the day, it's your customers that actually pay you. If you are not creating what your customers want, then they are going to go elsewhere to somebody else that will provide those services. So you need to understand who are your customers, right? And then, are your customers multi-sided or single-sided? So for some businesses like platforms, you might have a multi-sided customers where on one side you're trying to connect guys that maybe create to guys that maybe collect, and then you're bringing both sides together, and then it becomes a bit more complicated in terms of trying to address the needs of both sides, right? But some other businesses might just be single-sided, where you have the customer that wants something, that needs something, and you just deliver that. So you also have to think about your business and understand what sort of business you're building. Then what segments composition exists within that market. So there are different markets that exist, and then within those markets, there are different types of customers, if you like, personas of customers, where certain customers might value certain things more than the others. So your ability to creatively deconstruct your industry or your market to the relevant customers, segments, or personas within that can be very, very powerful, right? Being able to think about it creatively, because you might think that, okay, yes, I'm an engineer and I just provide civil engineering services to anybody that wants to build. That might be too wide for you to actually gain enough traction. But if you deconstruct that segment and think about, who are the guys in this space? What exactly do they want, right? What exactly do they need? And where is the biggest opportunity for you? That can then guide you in actually carving out a space for yourself, distinguishing yourself, and then creating value for that segment in a way that you can smash and smash and smash. Eventually, you might still expand, but usually it pays to start with a small segment or a fraction of the whole market, satisfy them, and then move outward from there. So trying to understand that segment composition is a very critical thing. And I think one important thing to note is the better you're able to think differently about it, the better you're able to create new models that can be very disruptive and that can actually give you a unique position. It's very easy for us to just sit back and say, okay, the market is based on this, based on maybe what we see in industry reports or what is out there in public. But thinking about it differently can give you new insights that can then drive new value proposition, new product, new services that can make the difference, right? And an example I came across recently was, if you think about the guys that make vodka and Guinness, I think DJO, right? So one way they think about their market segment is the heavy drinkers, right? Those guys that you just want to drink heavily every time and party and everything else. And those like lonely drinkers that just want to drink once in a while, but they want to drink like very, very exclusive drinks like scotch. And then when they think about that, they create like vodka that addresses those heavy drinkers that want to party and drink in groups and plenty. And then they have scotch, which is like for the executive or for the single man in his house just trying to drink. And that way they're able to then create the right targeting, the right messaging, the right sort of communication that attracts the people that they want to attract this product. So trying to deconstruct your target and understand their preferences, their personas, their behavior, what matters most to them, can help you in actually carving out a target segment for you to focus on. So I think that's very important, to be able to think about differently and then speak to your customer without speaking to them to really understand what matters to them. You might not really figure it out. For someone like some of the guys, like, again, I was talk about Abdul Ghafar's business, the engineering services, because he talked a bit more about it previously. Some of those guys are interested in delivering a project on a budget. So for them, it might not be coming up with the best theory of whatever, but it also matters. Maybe the most important to them in terms of their scale of preferences, I don't want the house to be more than 50 million per unit. So coming up with creative engineering solutions that can deliver the minimum or the best quality possible at that budget can be music to this set of guys' ears. And then if you're able to also sell that to them in a way that they see the value, then you might be able to capture that. Some other people might be something just different, or they want to do, so trying to unpack your customers into segments and trying to understand crafting the segments that work. So trying to get into their heads for their problems. What are their problems? What are the biggest problems they have? What are the needs? What are their habits are critical? But it's not enough for you to just listen to what they have to say. You have to also think about the problem yourself. You have to listen to what they say, how they act. So now somebody might tell you that I don't like doing X, but if you monitor and observe their action, they're actually doing X over and over again. So that tells you something about how you might design something that works for them and how do they feel about it, right? Emotion is also very important, so trying to tap into that can also help you better understand your segment. And I think the key thing here is trying not to solve a problem for everybody. Because most times, if you try to solve a problem for everybody, you end up not solving for anybody at all. So pick a segment, try to understand them the most, try to size up the opportunity, fix that, and then you can then blow out from there. So I hope that sort of communicates the key points here. If there are any questions on this, I would like to hear them. And if there are no questions, I would like to hear, some of your thoughts on your individual businesses. Which segment are you serving, and what are their problems based on your understanding today? What are their core problems that you're trying to fix? What are their needs? So I just want to hear from everybody on that particular topic, because I think it's very important. And if there's something you're struggling with, then maybe we can discuss that as well. Right. So who wants to go first? First, if you have any question or comments, you can shoot. And if not, you can then tell me the customers you are solving problems for and what exactly are their problems. Floor is open. Who wants to go first?
I think you should do roll call at this point.
I wanted to choose. Who wants to go? Bukola, are you ready? Gafar, you ready? Is Mohammed Mustafa on this call? And Abdurafi. Okay, sorry, go ahead, Gafar.
Okay, so I think for my line of business, which is a service-based business, and over time, the cost of building materials have gone haywire, and it makes clients even afraid to start any construction project. So looking at it, and I'm like, okay, maybe we could do something more cost effective, but at the same time, not all jobs that you get, you eventually get to be involved during the construction in this construction stage. So that's why most engineers, while they're doing their design, they try as much as possible to be safe. So So I think so maybe going forward, one could look at, okay, how you can, as much as possible, be safe and at the same time be most cost effective to your clients. So like you said earlier, working within the budget of your client, because that is very, very key. But these days, even working towards a budget is very challenging, as because the market prices for materials change like almost every other week. So but it's a big challenge to play on that, being safe and at the same time being cost effective. It's most of the time you're tending towards being safe than being cost effective. So
Yeah.
it's finding that middle ground where you are comfortable and at the same time your design is most cost effective.
Okay. Okay. So if I was going to ask, I think that's very clear. And then I think in terms of what they value the most, I think if we were to rank it from what you've said is safety and then cost effectiveness. But if I was to ask you, like, what are the different customer segments in that market, right? What are the different customer segments? How would you classify them?
Okay, so for the different customer segment, so we have, I think there are the government agencies, government ministries and all. Then we have the developers, that's those that are into the real estate development.
Mhm.
And so I think the list will be probably just an individual that plans to build maybe a house for retirement or something, just to, okay, I have this amount of money and I want to use it to tie down this property. So do I go into just buying off or build from scratch, or I don't have all the money to buy, right? So it means I
Mhm.
have to start from the scratch. And so I think from what you have said, I think in the segment one is okay. So I think it's just that level of customers, the government agencies, or okay, government agencies, multinationals, the bigger businesses, or the bigger cooperatives. Then the middle is the real estate companies, where they have they buy up a parcel of land and they want to develop a estate and all that. Then the lower on that level is just the individual that have a dream of owning a home.
Okay. Okay. I think that's a very nice way of putting it. And I think if you look at it, it's almost a blend of like your traditional segments with a bit of more peculiarity. So, for example, separating like the real estate developers from just the general multinational businesses that might also have construction. But again, if you think about it deeply as well, there might still be other layers of segmenting or personas that you can have. So, for example, the individual bucket is still quite broad, right? So you might have some individuals that are looking for the best design. They are not just looking for any kind of house, but they want like the best house with the best, engineering structure, architecture, and whatever else. And they'll go and maybe get like architects from Italy to design it. And then they then need, an engineer to vet that. There might be those that I just want to build a village in my house, the best, the least possible. So within that bucket, there are still different things. And the better you're able to separate them and then target them, the easier it's going to be. Because once you have your target focused on a particular group, you're able to then say, how do I then find out what's most important. So let's take the government and the agencies, for example. Even within that bucket, there will be different elements of them, because there might be some government guys that, you know, they just want the person that will give them the lowest so they can have huge budget slack or kickback. Others might be looking for good quality, top this and top that. So again, within that, there might then be groups that you say, okay, or some of them might never have money. You know, there are some agencies that their budget allocation is close to zero and they don't generate inflows. There are others like NNPC, DPR, CBN, and SEC that might be generating cash flows. And in terms of how they're able to move, make decisions, or what matters to them, it might also be different. So I think it's a good exercise to do, to try to think differently about your customer segment. And then once you have done that segmenting, try to then figure out what are their main problems or their needs. What exactly do they need for you to tap into that government agency, for example? You know, what will make the difference in you making that close? You know, for some of them, it might be that they are looking for somebody with a proven track record of 10 years, you know, that you've done this before, you've done that. For others, it might be that they want that you have certain qualifications or you've done certain things, or, you know, in terms of quality, they want that assurance that you're going to give them the best quality in the market. And for others, they just want somebody that has a registered company and can just collect the contract and then they will go and do something else. So trying to understand those problems needs is like the next level. And once you have that, it's easy to then say, okay, this is what I'm going to deliver. This is what I'm going to promise you. And based on that, you can expect that you can then get engagement. So thanks for sharing. Anybody else wants to go on customer segments? If not, we can keep the further discussions.
Okay, let me attempt, right? So once again, thank you for the presentation. My own is more or less like while I'm expressing my own, what I feel my customer segmentation is, I also like to ask a question. So I offer, like I said earlier, I operate a car wash business, right? And what that means is that I have found that I have two broad customer segments, right? Because of the location where I am. Now there are the customers that all they want to do is just get their car washed. Like basically all they see is a dirty or a clean car, right? No attention to detail type of people, right? So that negates my own business principle of offering attention to detail. But these people are unwilling to pay for that premium service. They just want to get their cars clean to a reasonable extent, right? Secondly, there are the other segment of customers who often are within the older generation range, who have spent a lot on acquiring their vehicles, right? And generally are just appreciative of the effort you put into making their cars clean. So those are the two broad customer segmentations I have. If I want to put them in two boxes, right?
Okay.
We can drill down deeper, but it will be unnecessary. It won't be effective for this. Now, oftentimes I find that, for instance, you're offering a service to somebody and the person comes in the other segment. Here's the price you're offering a service to this person. So for instance, this person wants to wash his car 500 naira. So 500 naira basically just gets him a body wash and probably you clean his carpets in it, not necessarily anything to detail, right? First, the first question is, how do I manage that? Because that's really not my idea. So this person could be probably coming from a mechanic and his car is very dirty, but he's unwilling to pay more than 500 naira. Now, if my customer in the second segment, who are the better paying customers, comes and sees I'm offering a service to this person for 500 naira, he starts wanting a service at 500 naira. He disabuses his mind from the fact that, okay, I pay more attention to his car, he just wants to pay lesser. So how do I manage that situation? Or do I just target one market?
Good question.
Is my question clear?
I think you're already thinking in the right direction. So I don't know. Can you mute? I'm hearing an echo. So I'll just respond to your question and then. All right, cool. I think it's better now. So, I mean, I think that's a very fantastic question. So, first of all, I like the way you, first of all, segmented the business in terms of your customers. So, those that are looking for a quick wash, you know, at the lowest price possible. And then those are ones like, that care and detailed wash for their babies. Some of the guys call it their babies. So the next question is, so how do you then balance that? So the first thing, like I mentioned, is you can't serve everybody, right? But before you choose whether you want to serve everybody or you want to serve one market, you also need to be careful as to what is the size of this segment that you'd like so much. So you might say that you're interested in detailed wash, but by the time you look at your market, because again, for your car wash business, it's very location specific, right? So you might have it in Abuja now. If you have people in Lagos that like detailed wash, you can't access that market because you can't teleport their cars to your car wash in Abuja. So that is very is location centric. So you have to assess the market to say, do I have enough people that wants to do detailed wash in this location to make my business a sustainable business? Or is it that you won't be able to sustain the business with serving only these guys? So that's a key question you have to answer with the segment, and it's very important. The market is important. If you try to solve for a market that is too small, then you might have a situation where your product is very solid, it delivers value, but there are just not enough people for you to meet out that value. And what that does is it makes your cost of service too high. And then if your cost of service is too high, then nobody wants to buy it, and then you get out of business. So that's one extreme, that you ignore the one side of the market and then you try to fix the other. And the other extreme is that you focus on the quick wash, mass market guys. And for that as well, the dynamics is a bit different, because for you to be able to deliver service at, let's say, 500 naira, then that means your cost has to be even lower than 500 naira. So what sort of cost are you having? And then how many of those guys would you need? So at the end of the day, it boils down to the numbers as well. So if I'm able to do 10,000 quick washes at 500 bucks, what does that mean for revenue? And then if I'm able to do just 10K worth of detailed wash, but I can only get 10 guys in a week, what does that mean? Look at those numbers and compare them, right? And then also look at your cost. What would it take you to deliver that cost, right? And you have to look at it without sentiment, because at the end of the day, the numbers don't lie. So I think that's the way our approach is, trying to see which market and not just for now, but over the long haul. So for example, for now, it might be that the detailed guys are not enough, but over the long haul, you expect that to change dramatically. Then in that sense, it might make sense to have a balance whereby you have some capacity to do some quick wash to make sure that enough naira is coming in to keep the lights on, but you're also focusing on the detailed wash for the guys that need that. And for that, it might then mean that there are separate product services where you might have your parameters for one and then you have for others, and how you then differentiate them is also very important. And it's not a new problem. There are several companies today that have brands that are for local, for mass market, and then they have some premium brands as well. And then you then try to make sure that the way you market them, the way you sell them, the way you position them for the customers might differ. But I think ultimately you want to know what is the potential size of this segment, right? And how much of those can you capture? So if you're able to capture enough of the detailed guys without, running out of business, then my advice would be that focus on those guys if the size is enough for your business, and then you can then scale. So that way you're creating a unique position that, when it comes to detailing, this is the place to go. But if you say you want to create a unique position and then you don't have people to pay for that value, then there's no point. You're dead anyway. So you have to look at it from that perspective as well. So I don't know if that provides some clarity to that question, Abdurrahman. I think you're still muted, so if you're responding. Rafi, do you have any follow-on? Did that address your question, or do you want to follow on
I
that?
think so he just came back in now. And I think Abdul Ghaffar has a question or maybe a contribution.
Okay, is Abdul Rafi back with us?
Yeah, I just admitted him back.
Okay, so let me just check if he got all my responses or if I need to go over some of the main points. Abdul Rafi, can you confirm if you're with us now? Okay, looks like it's still not settled. Okay, Abdul Gafar, please go. Abdul Gafar?
So I just wanted to contribute a little bit to what you have said to answer
Okay.
Abdul Rafi.
Okay.
So looking at when you have done your analysis, the guys that want the detailed wash or the ones that want just the quick wash. So I was thinking that maybe you can compare, you can segment your business in, okay, you have this for those that want to do the quick wash, like in form of a drive-through wash, which is just going to be maybe 5 minutes. You drive through and you're out, so you don't have to interact with those that want the detailed wash. Or even the detailed wash can be a sort of a home service business where you want instead of the car coming to you, you and your team go to the car where the location is and render the services. So you don't the detailed watch customers don't have to interact with the quick wash where they now start saying, okay, this is what I'm paying for this and this is what. So that's just. But I think you've answered a bit of it in your response. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for that addition. I think that's very very spot on as well. So let me just check if Abdurafi has even captured everything that we've been saying. Abdurafi, did you get my response, and did you get Abdul Gaffar's contribution as well?
Yeah, so I lost you for a bit because of, I lost my network connection, but I got a lot of what you said, and I got what Abdul Ghaffar said. So thank you very much.
All right, fantastic. And then just to then explain some of the beauty of trying to think through your business through this business model lens. So I like some of the contribution Abdul Ghaffar suggested. So one was that for the quick wash guy, rather than trying to deliver a service to them based on the way you've built up for like the detailed guys, where maybe you have like equipment that you're using and people that are working actively on it. If you can create like a drive-through system where for those quick wash guy, you just drive through, and then as you're driving through, all the brushes are just it's tech driven or machine, and then it just washes your car, cleans it, and then in seconds you're out. That can be a game changer for that particular segment. But guess what? For you to do that, that means you require specialized resources and also processes, machines that would then help enable you to do that. But let's say you're able to do that, you can then you can do 1,000 cars per day because you're washing cars per 10 seconds. So in that kind of case, you're also looking at the market. You can't ignore the market when you're thinking through this thing, because how many quick washes can you do in a day? So if the number tells you that you can actually do 1,000 quick washes in a day based on your location and the traffic there, then you can then look at what is it going to cost to put a structure like this in terms of investment. And then, from there, you don't need people to be doing it. Maybe it's just a machine as they drive through, they do that and it works out. That can then be a very solid way to address that problem of, okay, who do I want to serve? Because for each of those segments, what they value differs. And then to deliver on their value or the value they require, the resources and the activities also differs. Right. For the detailing one, you probably need specialized equipment and machines and people to do the work, and maybe the time it will take you. And let's say you can only do 10 cars in a day because it takes maybe 2 hours to wash one car. But for the other one, you can do it in X number of seconds, but you need that initial huge investment for capital to do like the structure, and then you have the market. So both of them might work, but again, you want to then decide on what is aligned with your vision and mission as well, right? And then if your vision is to do premium, then maybe you need to make sure that that premium has the potential to give you the value that will require to sustain the business. And then if not, maybe you need to go back to the drawing board, say, okay, is premium really what is relevant for this market? Is there a problem that we need to fix? And which was the first thing? And I think that we need to also go back to that is, what problem are you fixing? If there is no problem, then it will be very difficult for you to find that market segment or that people to solve for, because there's no problem to fix. But if you are clear that it's a problem and the problem is big enough, then it's easy for you to then throw your resources and time and money behind that problem and fix it with the hope that, yeah, it pays off. So I know that's quite a bit of different ideas, but I hope everything sticks. So thanks for those contributions, Abdurafi and Abdul Ghaffar. Okay, so the next point is value prop. Now that you've figured out your segment, you've validated that the market is big enough, the problem is strong enough, and there are people that, you know, they have this problem that you want to fix. The next question is, what exactly are you going to propose to help this segment? For the quick watch guy, using Rafi's example, he just wants, you know, the best price, the lowest price possible, shortest time possible, and it's out of there. So maybe those are the key things, the values, or maybe there are some other things as well. For the luxury guy, maybe there's more that he wants, you know, that care, that attention, maybe that personalized service where you even come to the house to pick it up, take it to your shop, fix it, and then take it back. You know, there might be different things that are value to this guy. So you need to then unpack, you know, what is most important to this guy? What is compelling about your value proposition? And then why should those customers buy from you? Very important. So now that you know the problem, you know, you have to think about that. And then ultimately you want to create value propositions that your customer segments are willing to pay for, right? So you have to create that. So once you have that, then, you know, you have a business. Without these two things, you don't have a business yet, right? But once you have a customer segment that requires certain things, that have certain problems, and you create something that solves that and they're willing to pay for, then you have a business, right? So it's very important to think about what is the compelling, and it's not enough for you to just listen to what these guys are saying. You also have to observe and see what actions they are taking. Somebody might tell you that they value detailed car wash, premium service, but by the time you look at the way they do, the way they behave and the way they act, maybe they only watch that premium once in a year, not every month or every week. And then, you know, what does that mean for your business model? Can you build a business model where you're in a fixed location where there are 1,000 houses, and out of that 1,000, only 10 people value detailed wash, but even those 10 people, they only do it once in a year? Is that business model going to be sustainable? Right. So you have to also monitor what they do and then determine why they actually even want that. You know, what is it that they want? Is it that you just want a sparkling car? So that those kind of guys, they might even, in addition to the detail, maybe having a subscription service where on a daily basis you also claim for them might be more valuable, and then you have a recurring revenue. You know, so trying to unpack their innermost feelings and pains and problem is very critical in coming up with solutions that are valuable. Right. So what are your thoughts, guys, in terms of your businesses today, or some of the other areas of the conversation in terms of your value prop? What are your thoughts around that for your businesses? Bukola, we've not heard from you, so maybe you should lead this conversation. Value prop for your insurance brokerage business.
So basically, right, for the insurance industry, almost okay, so I'm going to put it this way: the industry is divided into two segments: the corporate segment and the retail segment.
Okay.
So almost everything that you see in the corporate segment is insurable. You understand? So for me, that I'm basically a new entrant, what I'm dealing with in the corporate segment is more or less the red ocean, where there are a lot of competition. You
Okay.
get. So if I mean, I can't say I'm not going to operate in the corporate segment or that ocean. You understand? I still have to swim with the sharks.
All right.
Something is still going to come out. I mean, they're leftovers or whatever until you grow big enough to also be a shark. But my own blue ocean is the retail segment, which is what I'm focused on. Again, the only way to make an impact there is through technology. You
Okay.
understand?
Through
So
technology.
yeah, I mean, when I say technology, right now, I mean, people struggle like to get access to insurance services. So what can I do to to make that all simplified. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to, to solve.
Fantastic. And if I was to unpack some of the things you've said so there are two broad segments,
Yes.
corporates and individual. And
Yes.
like you rightly mentioned, within the corporate, there are red oceans. So which means what that tells me is that even within that corporate, there are still sub-segments and sub-segments and even different personas within that space that you can also target, because that's why you can say that there are some areas that are largely untouched yet, and then you can focus on those untouched areas. Exactly. So trying to unpack that particular segment again is also very critical, because that might be your sweet spot from a corporate perspective. But from the individual, you've also identified indirectly in your presentation, or maybe directly as well, in terms of the key value prop that might be very relevant for that segment. And from what you said, it might be convenience or simplicity or ease of access, because that's what technology will give you. So maybe as an individual, I just want to be able to log on to Shola's app and then say, I want to buy a motor vehicle or laptop insurance. And then maybe that's the deal breaker: convenience, simplicity, and ease. So that might be the value prop. And it might be something else. Maybe they also want to pay the cheapest price in the market, or something else. But yeah, thanks for those thoughts.
But then once I can solve that problem of, you don't have to keep looking for the best insurance or the best underwriter, or what's this product? What product can solve your problem? If I can provide all that information for you on my platform, then you get the best price. Yeah, I think it's okay. Yeah.
All right, sounds good. Okay, so let's move on. I've almost lost sight on time, so let's move on quickly. All right, so once you've figured out your customer segment, you figured out your value prop, the next thing is the channels. And what channels refers to is, how do your customers become aware of you and what you're offering them, and how do you also deliver your services to them? Right? So that's what your channels speaks to. Okay, 1 second. There's something that's supposed to come up. Okay, but the point is not coming up. Okay, but that's what channel speaks to. So for example, for Shola's business now, for the individual guy, he has identified that having a technology solution that delivers, the value that delivers is convenience, ease, and simplicity might be very important. And the channel that you're delivering that convenience and ease of access or ease of use might be through technology, right? So technology will be a key channel for you. And when it comes to technology, it might be mobile, it might be web, right? So that's like a channel for that kind of business. For another business, it might be a different thing. So maybe you're going to need, a particular location, like the car wash business. Your channel is the car wash, so they need to come into the car wash to see that. And then in terms of awareness, you might have billboards or whatever else there that they might use to also know that you're there. Or it might be social media where you're present, and then you also have information going out. But ultimately, when you think about channels, try to think about, how do they find you and how do you deliver to them? How do you deliver your value to them? Again, this will depend on the value proposition that you've identified and the segments that you're also trying to serve. So for some businesses, customer experience is very key, and they want to make sure that from A to Z, they control their entire experience. And then for that reason, they might, monitor everything line by line. For some other businesses, it might just be outsourced to a logistic company, to deliver. And if you think about Apple and Tesla today, the way they go about their channel and distribution is very tight. So Apple has its own Apple stores where, they try to make sure that the experience from when you walk in the door to how you interact with the people to when you get out is well managed, and, is a key value for them. Tesla has a similar model. Microsoft does not. And then some companies are different. So depending on what matters most to you, you might then decide on what that means. And again, that also then feeds into whether or not your value is being delivered intact to your customer segment. So there's a connection between your customer segment and the value proposition, right? And through that channels. So the next bucket is the customer relationship. So now after your customers have bought from you, right? It's important, particularly in today's market, to also maintain relationship with those customers continuously. So how do you maintain those relationships? Are you going to have like account officers that are also managing those relationships? Are you going to have like bots, where they can chat with you on Facebook or WhatsApp? Or are you going to have like customer relationship outsource service where 24 hours calling or email service or whatever else? Or are you going to have like robot AI chatbots that are handling those? So whatever it is, you have to also think about it from that. And then for a business like Abdulgafar, where you have some segments in the government agencies where you're dealing with big guys like FIRS and co, and then you have some other segment like retail guys that just want to build one house in their village. The way you manage relationships might differ. For one, you might just be sending them newsletters or have like automated emails that go out to them. For another, you might have particular managers that are relationship managers and maintaining those relationships. So depending on those segments, depending on your promise to them, your relationship might also differ. And then it might be that you're just using one central relationship management idea for them. But it's a key thing to also pay attention to. How do you stay connected with them? For some segments, they might be more digital natives, whereby you can reach them and stay on top of them on social media like Twitter and co. And for others, they might be more traditional people that you have to actually call them, visit their office, fly down if it's in Abuja or whatever else. So you also need to think about this very closely, right? Then you have revenue streams. So once you've figured out your customer segments, value proposition, and how you connect those two, the next thing is that should then lead to revenue streams that flow to the company. So how does this business earn from the value props? So you need to ensure that your revenue streams are as frequent and as heavy as possible, right, to support your business. But aside from that, you also need to think about collection. And when you do business with like government agencies, one big problem I've from experience seen is collection of your cash, right? It might take time. There are bureaucratic processes. You might not even get your complete money. So you also have to think about that based on your business model, does it put you in a position to collect cash quickly? And that's why, again, recurring business model where you already have automated cash collection, every month they just debit first of, that's a position you want to be in. So you're guaranteed that your revenue streams, you're collecting quickly. And that's something technology also empowers you to be able to do. Right. And then, thinking about that is very important. So how does your business earn from the value prop? You want to make sure you're earning from them, because if they are valuable, then that means somebody is willing to pay for them. So even for companies, and there's a common stage saying in the startup world that if you are not paying for a service, then what that means is that you are the product. So you might think about businesses like Facebook, where you can open an account and then it's just free service you're enjoying, or Google search. You can just go to Google and then any information, they say they're arranging the information for the whole world, you can get it. But if you're not paying, then that means you yourself are the product, because for those guys, what they then do is they sell your data to advertisers and they earn from it. Google and Facebook are one of the biggest advertising engines in the world today. And, they are free services. So always think about how you can earn. If anything is a value proposition, then you should be earning from it. If you're not earning from it, somebody else is. Okay? All right. So you might have multiple revenue streams, but the idea is that your customer segments are the ones that you are delivering this value to, and then these guys are the ones that will then be paying you for it. Or it might be another guy if it's a multi-sided business. You might have one segment that you're just providing free service to, and then they become your products that you're selling to another segment to pay you income. So that's also key. And then usually you want to make sure that you have diversified revenue streams so that, it makes your business model more robust, but not too many, right? Okay. Any questions or comments on the revenue? So we're done with the right-hand side of the business model canvas. Any questions or comments?
All good so far.
All good. All right, cool. So now let's move to the left-hand side where we have the infrastructure. So the first bucket here is your key activities, And what this says is, what are those unique activities that your business needs to do to deliver on its proposition? For a business that wants to, deliver designs or engineering proposition, a lot of the activity might involve the actual drawing, the calculations of requirements in terms of how much cement or how much steel you require for this kind of structure. So there's that level of work that needs to go in, right? So you have those core activities. For somebody that is doing like insurance brokerage, for example, a lot of that might be relationship building with your different markets, or if you're going to be doing it like Shola wants to do with technology, then maybe building a tech and managing that tech as well, and making sure that it reaches the requirement that your business will require. So what are those core activities that you need to do, right? And then how will you do these things? And will partners be needed? So a key thing to bear in mind here is that for your value proposition, there might be a lot of activities required, but under key activities, your focus should be on the core. What is the core activity that also gives you like a competitive advantage or a strategic position? And then anything else that is not core, you can outsource, right? You can outsource. But the idea is for your core activities, you want to ensure that they are within your control. And this goes back to having a robust business model. If you build a business model where your core activity is being done by somebody, you might end up in a situation where that person has a lot bargaining power and then might end up increasing their cost, which reduces your profit margin, or might even seize that service altogether and also puts you in a very difficult position. So you want to try as much as possible to optimize for all your core activities done internally as much as possible, which might mean, maybe building out stuff might increase your cost. Alternatively, you can outsource to key partners, right? Key partners. And that's why partnership is also very important. For example, Shola might say that his own cost strength is just, closing the sale and bringing and getting the right insurance, but he's not interested in building the technology. And then for that reason, he goes and partner with somebody else to build the technology, right? But what you might then end up with is that technology might be the main source of your competitive advantage in the long run. And then if you've outsourced that to somebody else to build and they control and own, then that might put you in a difficult position when that tech is now more valuable. And then by just jacking you off it, you're left with not much value. So again, that's the trade-off that you have to look at. And because this business model will continue to evolve and you might need to iterate, it might be that you partner initially, then after some time, you do it yourself. And I already gave the example of Apple and Intel, where Apple was dependent on Intel's chip and processors. But now in 2021, they're building their own chips for their MacBooks, for their iPhones, for their iPads. So you might have those situations because there's a trade-off. The trade-off for you trying to do it yourself today might mean that you have to go and learn programming, or you have to hire a ton of engineers, or you have to build certain things, which will cost money, time, and resources. But if you just partner, maybe you're just paying per user. For every time somebody uses it, you pay $1 or whatever else. So that might be more cost efficient today. But you must not lose sight of the fact that that particular activity might end up being more valuable in the future, and then you run into trouble. A good example here is Windows, right? Initially, Microsoft built the software for IBM computers, Windows, and obviously that was like outsourcing. And now, over time, the way the industry played out, Microsoft became more powerful than even IBM and more valuable than IBM. But in terms of the origin of some of those services, it started with somebody outsourcing to another person to do. And then that person said, I'm going to license it to you. So for every machine you do, you're paying me X or you're paying me Y. I think there was a similar story with Intel as well, where they built a processor for a particular company and then they then licensed it to other companies as well. So thinking about your business, always try to look at what are the strategic activities that might determine the winners in that industry in the long. It doesn't have to be just now, but you also have to be thinking long term for businesses that will thrive in the future. Okay, so those are some important things to think about. Now, your activities, like I mentioned, they enable you to deliver on your value prop. So there's a connection between those two, right? So when you're thinking about it, think about it from that light. Then your key resources are those unique assets that your business must have to compete, right? If you say you want to do a car wash business, for example, obviously you require like a physical location where the cars will be washed. If you're not doing like mobile car wash where you're washing at your client's place. So that might be a resource. You have to rent a place or buy a property. You might also need people to do the washing. You might need machines. You might need some other things. So what are those assets that are required? And for a technology business, it might be that you have an application or an algorithm that enables you to do business. Or like in Lego, you have intellectual property which protects your market. Nobody can copy your product. So what are those assets that your business would require? For somebody that is manufacturing cream or producing clothes, you might need a factory where your machines are and then your tailors are to get things done. So you need to think about that. And then how are you going to get those resources, right? How are you going to finance them? You need to think about that, right? So those resources enable you deliver on your activities, right? Because for an activity that involves, let's say, manufacturing, you're going to need a plant and people to run the machines. So they help you do that. So again, they are all connected. Then the last or the second to the last bucket is the partners. And I already talked about it, that the way you should think about partnerships are, what are those non-core activities that you need to do to deliver your promise, but you don't necessarily have to do them because they are not core. And then for those, you can get partners to do it. So for example, you might have sales guys, sales agents that you partner with an organization that has foot soldiers in different locations. And then for every sale they make, you give them a portion of that. But once you get those relationships, your own responsibility is now to manage those relationships with those clients and ensure that they keep getting the value, right? It might be in a different model where, you have partners whereby for you to deliver your ultimate promise, you need to get input from like the architects or whoever that is going to come up with the initial drawings, and then you do your civil engineering consultation, and ultimately you deliver that proposition. So you might have those key partnerships that you need to have to deliver ultimately on your promise, but you don't necessarily have to do them internally. Another one might be payments. Socialize building a technology to help people pay insurance or buy insurance. He doesn't have to build a payment gateway and go and collect CBN license for PSSP. You can partner with Flutterwave or Paystack and connect to their platforms, and then enable payment on his technology solution, and things like that. So you have to also think about those partners that will be required for you to deliver on your promise to your selected customer segments. And then once you've done all these activities, that will then lead to your costs. Because for you to do manufacturing, you need a plant, which is going to cost money. You need people that will work on the plant, which is going to cost money, right? For you to partner with Paystack, they're going to charge you X% of every collection that you make. So there will be some costs that will be related to your business. So you also need to start thinking about what are those main costs. You don't need to put a laundry list of items in your BMC. It's a very focused tool. So the idea is to focus on the main items, almost like the top 3 or top 5. So yes, in a business, you might need to pay security man salary every month, but that's not a critical cost. So you want to focus on the most important ones. And then when it comes to cost, there are some other things to think about, right? Are your costs variable in nature or fixed in nature? Right? And striking the right balance between these two can be very important. If you have too high variable costs, what that means is that you don't benefit from economies of scale as much, because with every increase in sale, you have a corresponding increase in your cost, right? So your margin is always going to remain flat. But if you have a good balance, and then as you grow with a good level of fixed costs, what that means is if I'm paying rent of 300,000, whether I wash one car or I wash 1,000 cars, my rent is still 300,000. So that rent is a fixed cost. So if you're able to increase your level of cars that you wash, then it reduces your unit cost for every car washed. So if you start your business this year and your rent is 300,000 and you manage to wash only 300 cars, what that means is that your cost, all other things being equal, is 1,000 naira per car. But all of a sudden, if you're washing 100,000 cars, then your cost can drop to 3 naira per car. Just all other things being equal, just taking rent as your only cost. So having a good balance between variable and fixed costs is important, right? Because if you have a lot of variable costs, that means you don't need to spend too much immediately to get started, because I'm just going to be doing. So if we think about a business like a trading business where you are buying materials and then you're just selling, you don't necessarily have to go and buy all the whole market before you can sell. So I can buy one and then sell, and then I know my cost. But from business models that require like physical infrastructure, most times your fixed cost is higher. And then that means you need to also bear that in mind. And then in terms of scaling, it also has an impact on your margins and things like that. And then ultimately, what you should be thinking about as you build your model is, how do I minimize cost? So anything that is not relevant, anything that is not necessary, you don't have to be doing that immediately, because that can be the difference between whether your business survives or dies, right? So you try to minimize your cost as much as possible. Right, and in today's markets where a lot of things are being driven by technology, most companies now are even moving to remote only. So you don't even have to build a location, you don't have to buy, for a consulting services, and then you have to then think about some of these other things as well. So those are like the 9 elements, right? From customer segments to value prop to channels to relationships to customer to revenue streams, and then to the activities, to the resources, to the partners, and the cost structure. And at the end of the day, you want to make sure that your revenue is greater than your cost. That's the bottom line, right? Literally, revenue minus cost equals profit. So, questions before we look at an example of a business model? Questions, comments? Are you guys ready? Are you pumped to create your own business model? Are you pumped? Okay, so let's look at an example of Microsoft. And I just put this one out there because I think that their business model is actually quite interesting. So if you look at the segments that Microsoft has highlighted for themselves, so they have businesses, which is very broad, but they've then broken down the businesses to freelancers, small, medium businesses, SMEs, large corporates, and then you have value-added resellers who are like some IT service firm that might buy in bulk and then sell. You have OEMs that create like equipment. You have developer, you have consumers, right? So quite a number of segments. Some of these guys are products. Some of them are, like actual customers that pay. And then if you think about their value prop, you have software as a service, enterprise solution, personal computing, and then they also have machines like the Surface Pro. You have productivity tools like the Office, Microsoft Word, and Microsoft. You have intelligence tools, and then you also have cloud-based solution. And for each of these different ones, you are paying software licenses per user, right? For some of them, you're also paying like advert income. So LinkedIn is free, Bing is free, but you are the product in those services, and then they're earning advertising income as well. And then you can also look at the channels. So they have retail stores for some product. They have value-added retailers helping them sell to the underlying retailer. You have the website, which is like their online service. You have social media for reaching out. You have PR as well, public relations, and then media. And in terms of customer relationship, you have consumer self-service. So this one, you're self-service, you're doing it yourself. You're the one, and it's targeted at retailers, the consumers, right? For the businesses, you have business support. So because that business is a higher value customer segment, you can afford to have like business sales and support team. And you can see for the consumer one, it's just self-service, DIY, do it yourself. And then for enterprise customer, you have enterprise customer intimacy. You have communities as well. And that's a very key feature for Microsoft. So for each of their products, there are online communities where other members can also provide value by serving the customer. And if you remember, one of the questions we talked about is how can your customers also help you add value to the process? So with communities, instead of Microsoft trying to solve all the questions or complaints, there are other customers that are part of these communities that once there is a question or a complaint, they also then provide that. So Microsoft does not need to go and hire extra support staff to be doing that because they're also leveraging their own customers to do that. That's a very beautiful way of minimizing cost for a lot of businesses. right? Because a number of businesses struggle with how do you handle complaints. And that's one of the biggest problems we see with companies in Nigeria. I've complained for 2 months, problems still exist, things like that. So communities is a good way to solve that as well. Then customer relationship management as well, you can also have that. Then in terms of key activities, some of their key activities go from software development to sales and marketing, training and support, R&D, very critical for information technology companies. In terms of resources, you have employees, IP, global infrastructure, technology. And then in terms of partner, you have OEMs like HP, Dell, where they provide the operating software, operating system. You have value-added resellers like companies like Sidmark in Nigeria that sell their softwares and co. You have developers who they partner with to develop apps for the App Store and other things. And then obviously you have retailers as well that then buy in bulk and sell to smaller units. And ultimately, in terms of their cost structure, they have global infrastructure, admin and sales, R&D, employee, distribution, development. And this is just a simple example of how, I think you can see how straight to the point, bullet points the ideas are, and then how it's focused and how we also connect. So for your segments, you have the specific corresponding value prop, the relationship management, the channel. So the channel for a consumer, for example, might be the retail stores, or it might be the website or social media. And then for a different guy like developer, it might be through OEMs or through other means. So thinking about this in a very simple and basic way like this can be very powerful in helping you shape your business and derive value from it. So any questions or comments? We're at the stage where we want to take questions or comments. Questions, comments?
So I can see that the business model canvas is similar to what Toyota also uses. They have this same design like this for like if you have issues within the organization,
Yeah.
and instead of I've forgotten what they call it, but I'll look for it. I mean, instead of writing a whole memo, summary, highlights, and all, you just put it in this kind of format.
Yeah.
So I think it's just been adopted, worldwide.
Yeah.
And
it's a powerful communication tool.
Yeah.
As well,
Yeah,
and it helps
exactly.
you
Just see everything in one picture.
at a glance. Yeah.
At a
And then
glance.
you can understand the trade-offs as
Yes,
well.
exactly.
You can understand the trade-offs.
The issues that
All
need to
right.
be addressed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
okay, for me, I mean, I'm always on the go. I need to excuse myself right now.
Okay.
Yes. I'm out. I need to. I'm having a meeting right now, so I need to leave. So can I get this? Like, I know I've been seeing mails, and I mean, are you going to share this model so that I can work on it and share it with you
Yeah,
later on?
sure. Yes. I'm sure you've already gotten the work papers, but we're also going to share the additional resources, including this as well. So yeah, you get that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Do we, is this the last bit of it, or there's still more?
No, so this is the end of the BMC session. So the next thing for us to do is to spend a few minutes on building a business model canvas for your business,
Okay.
right? And then we have some of. Sakina, did you want to come in?
Yeah, so we have, after the BMC, we have like setting goals for your business based on everything that you have learned or heard so far. And I think the very last bit is financial projections, but I'm not sure how many people actually went through that exercise. But yeah, those are the last.
Okay. All right. But I'm gonna get mails on all these.
Yes, we'll send the replay and the slides or whatever if you want them.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. I hope that's very useful.
By Haneef, I mean, he's always been my mentor, so.
Fantastic. We would love to hear, your feedback after the session.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great week.
All right. Thanks a lot, Bukola. So, Sakina, how are we doing on time?
you've exhausted your time, but since it's a very important activity, I think, we can still maybe 15, 20 minutes we can spend on actually curating your business model canvas.
All right. Abdulgafar has his hand up. So Abdulgafar, please go ahead.
Just wanted to speak on this, the customer relationship on the business model canvas. And up until now, I'm just realizing that most of our design softwares that we use as civil structural engineers, they have the customer service, and they have the community.
Right.
Where you have a challenge, you go, or you just Google it, and the first few results that comes up are the community response, where some people have experienced those
Same
problems
problem.
before,
Yeah.
and provided solution to it. Not even get okay. So example is Autodesk, who are the developers of majority of our softwares. So sometimes when I run into problems and I just need to find the solution to it, I Google, and some of the most response I get are from the communities where somebody has experienced such problems before, and somebody else providing solution, even outside Autodesk providing the solution. But what they have is they give that platform where people can discuss the problems they have, and where nobody else has come up with the solution, then they can now look into providing solutions. So up until now, I'm just realizing that that was probably part of their business model.
Yeah, and it's actually a very critical and deliberately designed part of the business model. So Microsoft, for example, one of my friends who is like a developer, he won they gave him an award, MVP award, for contribution to the community. It was signed by the CEO, Satya Nadella, to show how important they place value in it. So they also recognize the community members and encourage them. So if I see that one of my friends is already winning an award and getting recognized by Microsoft, you'll be more motivated and interested in contributing. And for those communities, they also have community managers that ensure that those conversations are going on smoothly, nobody abuses. So it's a deliberate attempt. And I think without an exercise like this, where you're looking at what are those things that will enable you deliver, and you're trying to make sure you're doing it at the least cost possible. Because it's possible for them to have said they will just go and hire thousands of people to be responding to comments, but is that sustainable? So again, thinking about it very carefully and differently can be very powerful. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So I don't know if there are any other comments or questions. If not, I would like us to jump right into building our business model canvas. I'm not sure there's any point in breaking out into rooms, since we are not too many. So we can build out here in public. And if you have any question around, okay, what segments or how do you think about any of the elements, you can, just speak to me directly or drop a comment in the message box, and then we'll address it right away.